She summoned the most vile individual one. The unspoken secrets are listed below. About I love Lucy and Vivian Vance and the video through to the conclusion because the last trick will undoubtedly make use of the reality of the degrading contract behind Ethel Mertz's role. In 1951, television in America was rocked by a casting choice. Vivian Vance, 42, was portrayed Ethel Mertz in the renowned I Love Lucy as a sitcom. However, from the very at first, the position was obscured by her. For many years, it was thought Vivian Vance had a contract with ignominious agreement to put on 15 pounds just to enhance Lucille Ball's appearance glamours. What is the reality? There wasn't any such. It was only a joke that a party Lucille made up with ridiculous gradines such as grow 5 pounds a week or never be more humorous than Lucy. However, shockingly, this joke was taken as true by Hollywood. In actuality, Vivance's weight varied throughout time. She has struggled with dieting and a perception of her physique, but was never compelled to take action. However, the rumor was sufficient to put a disadvantage to Vivian. The general public believed that she was merely a shadow sacrifice to allow Lucy to shine. Lucy once said, "I salute can't be Ethel Vivian. You are my, your hair color is identical. You're too attractive." To address this risk of competition, the crew compelled Vivian to dress in loose-fitting clothing and utilistic aesthetics to age her appearance. On-screen, Ethel Mertz was a simpleton standing next to Lucy to emphasize the intelligence of the leading lady. However, behind scenes it was a purpose. The degrading agreement. Vivian Vance was the target of However, that was only the explosive partnership between William Frawley and Vivian Vance. Vivian Vance's initial encounter with William, her on-screen persona would be Fr. Husband, was in an uncomfortable situation. After she turned to Desi Arnaz upon seeing him, "And who is that old man?" when she heard that he would portray Vivian, her husband chuckled. "He resembles me more than granddad." Regretfully frolic at all, and from that point on, the animosity started to creep in. To him, in addition to being a co-star, Vivian was also a hog who was wild and unsightly. That animosity accompanied them during their stay on I Love Lucy. Vivian was mocked by Frawley as a doorknob, and she was embarrassed having to portray a man's 25-year-old wife years older than her. Later, Desi Arnaz Frawley admitted that he detested her voice and she detested having him around. In the meantime, alcohol caused William Frawley to spiral. He was nearly constantly intoxicated by 1953. On set, he would conceal his trembling fingers, and his eyes were bloodshot. His pockets as he mumbled his words. He would dispute with the director during the shoot and secure the door to his dressing room, keeping the whole crew waiting. Vivian Vance was at his breaking point, shackled for a separate dressing area. From after that, Fred and Ethel were only present in before the camera and even disregard each other in person. The animosity continued even after the cameras were turned off. Conversely, it intensified into an incredible extent, resulting in one of the most well-known feuds in Hollywood. At her 3, Vivian Vance would like to pass away and show up alongside William Frawley, eventually after his passing. In 1955, Desilu Studios developed a bold concept, a spin-off series focusing on the two adored figures, Ethel and Fred Frawley. William agreed right away, but Vivian Vance coldly and categorically refused, saying the show would not be the same without Lucy and Ricky. Hollywood was taken aback as they considering the chemistry on screen to be pure gold between Vance and Frawley, but for Vivian, the enormous salary was insufficient to enable her to go back to the pain of dealing with Frawley each day. In the end, this conflict did not finish with death. March 3, 1966, William Frawley's heart died unexpectedly. Hollywood Boulevard was attacked. When she did dinner party, I received the news. Vivian was overjoyed. She lifted her glass. I said, "Champ for everyone." No wreaths or condolences were present, and not even a tear for her ex-co-worker. The animosity that had halted in 1951 when her adversary was buried at last. But the ghost of William Frawley wasn't the only one. It plagued Vivian's existence. After departing studio, she had to deal with a different kind of hell. For she mistreated Vivian's spouse whilst I Love Lucy was being filmed in 1954. While filming was underway, Vivian Vance frequently showed up on set with a black eye from Philip Ober's beating. The damage was evident beneath the lights, which made the main actress furious. Ball, Lucille made a direct point, yelled at Vivian, "If you don't yell, get a divorce from him for you." Abuse was caused by the discrepancy in their professions. When Vivian was well known, the career of Philip Ober was Philip Ober was always envious of his wife. He beat her frequently. However, she put up with it because at the Hollywood would not readily accept the Tima, female celebrity openly addressing domestic violence. Furthermore, following a scenario that made viewers chuckle, Vivian frequently had to steal in order to conceal a second reality that she was losing from within 5. Vivian Vance had to get treatment while filming I Love Lucy's years of production, from 1951 to 1957, were an ongoing battle with mental health concerns. Vivian Vance, which sprang from her severely life. Growing up, Vivian Robera Jones in a little community where the rigid Methodist church regulations, her as a devoted Christian mother always saw as a direct route to hell on stage and pretending to be something embarrassing. From a young age, anytime she had a strong desire to in terms of the arts, Vivian was brutalslanced, which caused her to feel excluded in her own household. She was plagued by this anxiety. Throughout adulthood, during the 1930s, Vivian experienced partial paralysis of the face. Despite her recovery of a deep-seated insecurities with her beauty hung on, the pressure to perform made every time a camera was nearby. Her heart tightened, pointed at her, causing insomnia nights and making her look for expert assistance. Even worse, Vivian needed to maintain a weight that was greater than she desired, to dress dowdily and use cosmetics to make oneself appear more repulsive to draw attention to Lucille Ball. She frequently had to acknowledge that I needed to attend treatment in order to withstand the filmmaking process. For someone who was already prone to emotional instability, though the set's pressure was like pouring a fire with oil on it. Additionally, when that tension it exploded, when it could no longer be contained, into bitter battles. 6 Ball, Lucille and Vivian argued before turning into mates while the movie was being filmed. 1952's second season of I Love Lucy. She was Lucille Ball's unborn child. Desi Arnaz Jr. is the second kid. The filming timetable was extremely constrained, and the whole crew needed to get used to Lucy. Vivian was late one day because imagine a gridlock on the route to the Lucy blew up right away. She shouted aggressively in front of the entire "Do you know how long we've all been here? Crew been anticipating your arrival." However, rather than Vivian remained silent and fired right away. Back paradoxically, Lucy made fun of her directness. That instance altered their. From a tense situation, Vivian and Lucy started to discover a Unica report, and their friendship blossomed. The remainder of their lives. This close their friendship made it easier for them to collaborate. Flawlessly shown on screen, producing some of the most famous comedy sequences in history. However, few individuals are aware that beneath the never-endingness the audience laughed. Their very terrifying backstage secrets. 7. The horrifying details of the Vivitamata and the scene at the Chocolate Factory Vega commercial. The traditional Chocolate Factory 1952 scenario in which Lucy and Ethel in a panic placed candies on the conveyor belts were actually quite uncomfortable. Vivian Vance's experience. The equipment continued to break down, and the speed of the conveyor belt would abruptly grow, requiring her to take one chocolate after chocolate. By the conclusion, Vivian was worn out from the day and sick to my stomach. The crowd chuckled, but the suffering had to be endured by Vivian. That there was more sacrifice to be made. In 1952, a vitamin advertisement, Vivian had to consume a tonic that has 23% alcohol. For a realistic image, she had consumed alcohol till she was obviously inebriated. Live. The audience thought it was brilliant performance. However, they were unaware of that when television first started. Their actors were not protected by any laws. That sometimes the cost of comedy has to be paid. One's personal health. Then nobody anticipated that Ethel's very function Mertz appeared to be merely a shadow. Alongside Lucille Ball, would covertly alter Hollywood's past in a manner that doesn't Tate may have been predicted. 8. The part of Ethel altered the course of Hollywood. Behind the Vivian, always aspired to be and acknowledged as a standalone celebrity, not the shadow of Lucille Ball. Just when she went celebrity exploded, the negative aspects of a celebrity also surfaced. 1956 Every week, thousands of letters stream in. Accompanied by heartfelt compliments were frightening threats, derogatory hints, and as well as warped composites of her visage by saying, "Ethel must die." Every move she made would be followed by someone to get candid photos, hide behind fences pictures, and even rap on her door, just to see in the middle of the night the actual Ethel. Additionally, to move around town she needed to employ a bodyguard to protect their security. These fixations were Vivian down more and more until she recognized that she couldn't live in Ethel Mertz, the golden cage. And then she made an unexpected choice. 10. The shocking choice to leave the position to the general public. Vivian Vance accomplished this in 1965. The impossible. She departed from the position that had shaped her professional life. This implied leaving her safe zone of fame behind, large salaries, as well as the chance to always be in the picture that fans expected to number in the millions. Numerous people called its career suicide. Studios rumored that she was completely insane, and newspapers said that she had been deceived by Vivian. Viewers, however, Vivian saw this as the cost of being authentically herself. She would want to take the chance off to blissness and being influenced by the whole nation rather than spend eternity in the shadow of Lucy. That choice created a new phase, but not the same as Vivian's. But a brutal truth said in Fast 11 following My Love for Lucy, Vivian was let go from a Broadway production and had to appear in advertisements to make a Vivian made a comeback to the stage in Don't Drink, a play by Woody Allen thwart her. However, throughout the practice sessions, she was replaced after being dismissed in front of. Woody Allen stated plainly that she wasn't suitable for the position. The play proceeded to have a prosperous run of 598 shows. Without Vivian by the 70s. Vivian Provedetto looked for stability. Turn up the stage lights. She turned to become Maxwell's well-known face. Advertisements for House Coffee, playing the good neighbor Maxine, with a warmer cup of coffee and a smile. Vivian Vance's ads for Maxwell House might have enjoyed widespread popularity, but for they served as a stinging reminder to her. The Broadway's peak and her 1953 Emmy were gone for a long time. The lady who once produced America as a whole laughed and was now merely attempting to hold on to any hope for the viewers to continue seeing her on the TV. However, behind Vivian's beautiful smile in those advertisements, life became more gloomy. She concealed her fear in an unexpected fatigue episodes. Go home. Vivance's smile was accompanied with a severe health issue. In 1977, Lucille Vivian Vance was invited by Ball to take part in the special on CBS, Lucy Calls the President. The audience found it to be a Lucy and Ethel's lovely reunion. However, the reality behind the scenes was very bleak. While filming, Vivian had a mild stroke. She shuddered, but concealed it, maintaining her smile and remaining entirely true to one's character, no predict knowing it would be her last time on set. Performance. Furthermore, Vivian was fighting the illness of breast cancer as well. It had spread and depleted her since 1973. Even after having surgery and chemotherapy and experiencing bone discomfort, she maintained her smile and humor despite the agony. When she made a public appearance, just when the lights went out and the door closed, did anyone realize what was hidden behind that smile? Was a war that was both silent and fierce, which only the world dared to call after she was dead. The unseen griefs end, a legend's finale. Vivian Vance: people saw me make them, he once stated. Laugh. But nobody was aware of the number of times when the curtain came down, I sobbed. Her existence was, in fact, a lengthy sequence of injuries, both emotional and physical. Vivian's cumulative suffering led to many mental collapses. The initial one was during a theater tour in 1945. Afterward, she was identified by a physician with chronic anxiety disorder, which resulted from her suppressed upbringing by her mother and her poisonous unions. There are documents that show she had a serious collapse and had to take into electroshock treatment. In a time where there was still stigma around mental health, Vivian had to remain silent and hide. Became a symbol for women in the same circumstance. However, her greatest grief was being unable of becoming a mother. Aoba's miscarriage shut that door. Everything she tried after that failed. Vivian adored Desi Jr. and Lucy as though they were her own offspring. However, observing Lucille Ball only raises her own children expanded the emptiness she concealed that suffering by being a working mother, providing Gideon actors, and providing them with Thakur that she was never able to provide her own child. The chance to get Ethil's shadow appeared once, when I After Love Lucy concluded. CBS proposed a spin-off. Fred and Ethel's series. William Frawley concurred right away, interpreting it as a ticket to keep his career going. However, Vivian adamantly declined. She declared, "No sum of money is large sufficient to force me to return to him. 6 years of living with a poisonous alcoholic was more than sufficient for freedom was more valuable than." By the late 70s, Vivian's physique was weak from sickness. In 1979, Belvedere was where she spent her last days. Lucille Ball, her partner's adversary and confidant, stopped by. An eyewitness record that they all sat together, afternoon sobbing and laughing. When Lucy, as she stood up to go, she cried silently. Without uttering a single word. Lucy, her daughter, later, Arnez, remarked, "My mother wept for Vivian for several months due to the fact that disagreements and envy, the connection between they were more profound than any spotlight." She was taken by Vivian Vance on August 17, 1979. Final exhale. She left before that. Handwritten correspondence revealing that her resentment had persisted throughout their life, not being allowed to lead chances simply because she was either restriction of women to a single role, and bung despised and undervalued by manufacturers. These letters were more than a simple goodbye. They were a last condemnation, an exclamation from a heart that had been worn out following endurance for a lifetime. Vance Vivian, the woman who brought laughter to millions of viewers, died beside Ethel Mertz, with sorrows that nobody was aware of. However, she abandoned a lasting legacy and a reminder that behind every chuckle, there are occasionally ones that don't go away, and actual people will give their lives to support the illusion on the little screen. Vivian Vance left more than simply a chuckle. She left a silent revolution in the United States TV. Prior to the appearance of Ethel Mertz appearing on screen in 1951, the idea of an exceptional supporting actress was sharply present. That was altered by Vance. 1953 saw her become the first Pamela Sivan Emmy for exceptional assist, establishing a new classification and demonstrating that the supporting figure could be work soul as well, that heritage is not limited to the honest. She possesses a bravery to defend her rights, requesting a pay increase, better clothing, and in a time when most actresses said nothing, and Vivian dared for her to declare, "I know my worth," made that voice the standard for next generations of female artists. However, the biggest legacy of Vivian Vance is not numbers or contracts. It's the prototype of a typical butt-stunning woman on the tiny screen. Hollywood sought glamour, but lavish pictures. Vivian brought a commonplace figure who was awkward but humorous and sincere. Mertz, Ethel Beckham, well known in millions of houses in America. The neighbor you would like to be trusted by your dearest friend. Looking back, audiences now don't just think of a humorous figure, they think of a woman who had to make a sacrifice, herself to maintain the amusement of others. They recall an actress who suffered the consequences, given her youth, health, and genuine self to focus on her artistic endeavors. Vivian in 1979, Vance passed away. However, Lucy is always reared. Whenever I love her, she comes back to life. Additionally, that legacy will never go away, as a reminder behind every chuckle demonstrates fortitude, resiliency, and occasionally injuries that don't go away. People continue to favor the idea that the narrative concludes brilliantly, with eternal glory and thunderous cheers. However, the most crucial element of any legend is frequently obscured by the shadows, a location where the audience was never permitted to go inside. It's a public concern. Flashing cameras, a shimmering image, unending smiles and beautiful words. However, only by drawing the velvet curtain back, we'll notice a soiled and cracked foundation. With wounds from that period, and quiet retreat to hide on purpose. Legends are not the result of peace. They are formed in extended periods of evenings during times when dead eyes gaze into the shadowy backstage area. Behind the glowing grins featured on magazine covers a brittle mask. Behind the ferventures is a tired heart that has been rewarded. The cost of being worshipped in public.